Welcome to Charity Therapy, a podcast from Birkin Law about building better nonprofits. I'm your host, Jess Birkin. When you think about meetings at work, do you get a warm, fuzzy feeling inside? Probably not. Your meetings probably suck. My guest today is Matt Homann of Filament, and we answer some questions and learn how squirrels, zombies, and porcupines can help your meetings be better. Stay tuned.
My name is Matt Homann. I'm the founder, CEO of Filament in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a recovering lawyer. Don't hold that against me. And I help people do better meetings, conferences, retreats, offsites, and stop wasting their time in bad meetings.
Love it. Everybody hates a bad meeting. One of the reasons that I stay small and solo with just like a couple people helping me is to avoid bad meetings, right? That's the one sure way to avoid bad meetings. Just don't have enough people to have real meetings. Oh, that doesn't work for everybody, though. And I've got some questions here that I've sort of compiled as best questions for Matt to answer because these questions are all about terrible meetings.
You know, one thing before you ask, if I can just jump in, like the meetings are things we spend all of our time in, and yet it's not something we practice getting better at. Right? People who spend more time in meetings than they do using any other tool, program, Excel, Outlook, any other tools they use. And yet we've all taken classes or learned to be better at certain things. And yet meetings are universally terrible, whether they're writ large, 1,000 people in a conference, or they're 5 people around a small conference room virtually or in person. And we just don't think about them, yet we all hate them. So it's kind of like the billable hour in that regard, Jess.
Yeah, I gave that up too.
Me too.
All right, here's some questions that you are going to be ace at because they're all about bad meetings. All right, here's our first question. The questioner says, I'm on the board of a voting member association. We have been trying to amend our nonprofit bylaws for over a year and a half. That's a really long time. Each time the board proposes a revised set of bylaws, one of our members stands up and starts complaining about not following proper procedure or quibbles with the wording of the bylaws. The rest of the members all seem to be persuaded that something is wrong. The board has been too wishy-washy to deal with him, and the vote to amend the bylaws hasn't passed at any of the several member meetings we've had on this topic. I'm the new board chair, and I want to move this group forward. Help!
Step 1, get rid of that board member. Step 2, start to realize that not everything you do has to be in a meeting. This is a mistake that lots of people make, that work is done in meetings. Work should be done before meetings, right? Decisions should happen in meetings, or ideas should be generated. So, for example, one of the ways that I would approach that is I would divide up first the process questions and the content questions. Right. So the process questions, if they're saying we're doing it wrong, is that a Robert's Rules of Order challenge, which is a big pain in the butt anyway. Mm-hmm. But to say, OK, step 1, here's what our process is going to be and lay it out in a document.
Yeah.
Put that document in a way where it can be commented on. Send it out weeks ahead of time and says, we're going to use this process here. And the first 20 minutes might be, let's talk about the process if we've got any objections, but you have to raise those objections ahead of time so we can prepare. Lots of people will raise objections, will do that sort of things in meetings just because they don't want to have to decide, or it's the only chance that they have to exert power. So in that situation, number 1, set the process out, require that comments, thoughts, insights be shared ahead of time, or they're kind of gone forever.
I love that. I actually accidentally do this a little bit with, like, when I give a client a scope of work and it's like, okay, I'm going to revise your bylaws with you because this kind of situation happens, right? There's like one person who just is, well, that should be a semicolon and not a comma or, whatever. So I do bake that into like my scope, like this is how this is going to work. What I don't do is I don't talk about it out loud as much as I probably could. And it's in writing, which, because lawyers, but I love the idea of like starting off the meeting or the process, let's talk about the process and agree to the process, because then you've got buy-in and they have to stick to it.
And I think one of the keys is to divide process from content. So you might do this in one meeting, say, hey, in our 3 meetings from now, we're going to do this. We're voting on these bylaws. This meeting, we're going to talk about process and agree upon and lay it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the key is that doing some of this work asynchronously, raising objections, collaborating, sharing ideas. Sometimes in the real world, you might find that a meeting isn't even necessary because everyone agrees, right? So you divide up the process and find out, are their objections process-based or are they content-based, right? So solve for the process. Everyone agrees. And then on the content side, do the exact same thing. I want this is a collaborative document is not hard to build anymore. It can be comments in Word. It can be a Google Doc. It can be any one of a number of these tools. But I need all of your objections here by this time. And then we knock them down one at a time.
In this particular scenario, what I'm reading here is that this is not a board member who's objecting. This is one of their association members. So it's like we've made all these decisions at the board level and we've agreed to our process. Then we put it out to our voting body and they're supposed to go yay or nay, up or down. And this person just keeps gumming up because the way it works with the legality is the voting members need to vote on approving the bylaws changes that the board has put forward. And so, you've got this one squeaky wheel that refuses to, they sound like a Robert's Rules nerd to me.
Well, I think the key, you shine a light on what their objections are. That's where you divide out the process piece first, then the content piece, and make sure their objections are clear, right? So I've got 7 objections. All right, great. 6 of them don't matter, right? We've heard them, right? We've now voted around them, but you can't use process to drive challenges to content, right? The same thing happens on decision-making generally, right? We tend to object about the right people are in the room. It's just an objection so we don't have to lose. We've seen a little bit of that right now in history. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to air, but
soon.
Process because the content is unassailable, right?
Right.
So divide them up, bifurcate those 2 processes, and you're going to find that person has fewer places to hide and their agenda ultimately comes out.
I love that. Also, if there's a way this organization could engage this member, maybe there's a committee that they could put this person on so they could air their objections before it gets to the last stage of the journey.
That's right.
Involve them more. It's counterintuitive, but I think that can work in this kind of situation.
Well, you want your advocates and your heretics together early on and thinking about the communication, even if they're not doing the work, capturing those early and say, hey, to this, Debbie Downer, this particular member, hey, we're building something else. We know that you have a unique perspective. Let's use that superpower of picking everything apart and help us prepare moving forward.
Right on. Ready for question 2?
I'm ready.
All right. My organization uses shared calendars. Managers are able to book time on my calendar directly, and frequently I'm invited to meetings that I either feel I don't need to be at or that take 3 times as long as they should reasonably take. Ugh, been there. I'm overworked already, and I get that I have to go to some meetings, but this is ridiculous. I'm always behind on work because I'm in meetings. How can I tell my manager I need to skip some of these?
I think it's less about telling your manager you need to skip and more about working with your manager to be better at meetings. So one of the things that I always think about is meeting math, right? An 8-person meeting for an hour is not an hour meeting. It's an 8-hour meeting.
Okay. How does that work?
It's 8 hours of people.
Oh, right.
Right?
And
so every hour meeting is a day. And so a nonprofit, some of the nonprofits we work with here at Filament, capacity is their biggest challenge. They need more people. And so if you can say we can get rid of 1 meeting a week, that's a person for a day, right? Or
that's
the equivalent.
Amazing. I love
and
that,
so
that
thinking
framework.
Through that by itself is one thing. The second thing is to start to understand what the meeting's intended to accomplish, right? If it's your boss, and you can't solve this for everybody all at once, but if it's a boss or a peer, sit with them and say, hey, I'm willing to help you with this meeting. Let's talk about the agenda. What do you want to accomplish? Who needs to be here? I have a worksheet, Jess, that I'll share with you that has all of these questions laid out. Who needs to be there? What homework do they need to be? What will we accomplish? Maybe even what experiments are we going to try to make the meeting shorter? We always love the 47-minute meeting versus the hour meeting because people can't add 47 more than twice in a row. And so you end up with just gaps in your schedule that you otherwise don't have. One of our clients, the biggest employer here in St. Louis, we've been talking with them, and they have just made a moratorium on meetings on Mondays.
Oh, love that.
And are knocking all the meetings off the calendar between Thanksgiving and the New Year's unless they're crucial, right?
Yes.
So ask yourself, could this meeting have been an email, right? There's lots of little tips, but the moment you start becoming the person who is raising your hand and having some input into these meetings, then all of a sudden you can say, hey, by the way, do we really need to invite this person? Why are they necessary? How important is this? Because I'm convinced that meetings are really where procrastinators live their best lives. Because if I set a meeting for 2 weeks from now, I don't have to do anything until 2 weeks from now.
Right.
But adding some of these behaviors into the mix will go a long way. And again, no one likes meetings, right? I mean, they like their own meetings. It's kind of the Lake Wobegon theory of children, right? All of my meetings are slightly above average.
Oh, yes. Yes.
But that would be a start. And another part of it is just start to add things up, right? So you say, I have spent 47% of my time in meetings. Half of them, I'm curious about why I'm bringing more value sitting in that meeting than doing my other work. One last little piece of this. You go to the meeting math, and I'll get the numbers wrong. But again, we'll go to make it easy. 10 people in a meeting, manager, 8 direct reports. And each of those direct reports is at this meeting to give the manager an update, 5 or 6 minutes. So that's the hour, right? It's 6 minutes of updates from everyone. So that's a 10 hours worth of meetings, right? 10 people all spending their hour. If that manager goes and one-on-one has those 6-minute conversations with everyone individually, right? Each of those conversations becomes 12 minutes, right? 6 of mine, 6 of yours. But you now have cut a 10-hour meeting into a 2-hour meeting when it comes to time, with the exact same amount of things accomplished. Now go back to the previous question and think about how you might asynchronously do that and have everyone put their update in a blog, in any one of a number of collaborative tools. Then maybe that meeting instead of an hour is 30 minutes and we're talking about the stuff that everyone's doing.
After we've already heard the updates. Yeah.
We've already heard the update.
Yeah. Amazing. And that's so critical because nonprofits particularly, staff is usually the highest expense. And
right.
From my days being in-house, I know how it feels to be overloaded. You're drinking out of the fire hose and you're just begging for people to add another body to your team. And they're just like, well, we just don't have the budget.
You should not be able to complain about people in not having enough people in nonprofits if you have terrible meetings. This is easy. It's the easiest it's the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest ROI. And the truth is most of them aren't necessary, but we've always done them that way.
I love that. Yes, it's so true. And what's funny about the nonprofit sector is it shares things with the legal industry that I've noticed. And we've always done it that way is one of those things, right? So nonprofits are very risk averse. They don't like to take risks because taking a risk is often expensive and they feel like they don't have the dollars to take opportunity risks. And so that leads to a culture of, well, we've always done it this way, so we should just keep doing it this way. So I love these solutions that you're proposing. Are you ready for our third question?
I'm ready. I hear this third one's going to be really hard.
All right. So I grew up on the East Coast and have moved to the Midwest to work at the central office of a larger nonprofit. I've noticed that at this organization, we have middle management or upper level management meetings where we waste a lot of time being, quote, polite and not talking about the real cause of problems. Or worse, we have people who are allowed to talk and talk and talk no matter how far off the agenda they get. I know being raised out east, I'm more direct than a lot of people here, but is this also a nonprofit sector thing? It's making me crazy.
So first of all, your meeting sucked on the East Coast too. They just may have sucked for different reasons. My gut feeling here is that there's about 12 different things to unpack in that question, but a simple model that we use, and it feels kind of fun and silly and lightweight, but it's really powerful, is the recognition that in every meeting there are 4 creatures. There are elephants, there are zombies, there are squirrels, and there are porcupines. So the elephant in the room is that thing we all know is here that we just pretend does not, right? And every room has at least one elephant. The zombies are the issues that never seem to die, right? They keep on coming back over and over and over again. The squirrels are the things that distract us, and the porcupines are the things that are hard to share. And some things have a mix of those, right? Porcupines tend to be more personal. It might be because of power balance. It might be introvert versus extrovert. It might be because this person is my boss or a jerk to me or whatever. And so part of dealing with each of those is calling them out and naming them. And so in the worksheet that I'll share, one of the coolest parts is to say, hey, I know they're going to be in the creatures. What are they going to be likely and how do I plan for those? So if I know, for example, that we have Bob, that's always a man. I wish that weren't true. We have Bob who wants to talk about this. First of all, I might say, hey, Bob, this is on the agenda. It's last for this reason, because this other stuff is really important, but I want to make sure I give you time to talk about this because you see, it seems to be important for you. Number two is, and I just said don't do as many meetings, but maybe we have the one meeting for Bob's issue. We might also say, people do the parking lot a lot, but when you start to name them in these silly ways, someone say, hey, this might be a squirrel, but you're like, yeah, exactly. That's a squirrel. Well, we're not going to deal with that right now.
Yeah, I like that because then they're self-identifying.
The zombies are probably the most important because make a plan to kill them.
How do you kill it?
But you call it a zombie, and all of a sudden people have a little more fun. Like, oh yeah, this might be a zombie. This might be an elephant. One other thing, and this is we do a lot of meeting design sprints now, where we're helping people kind of redesign whether it's a high impact meeting, whether it's one that might be with shareholders or with big customers or internal with executives. We're doing one of these about a year and a half ago. And this idea came out of that, is that at the end of every meeting, you need to have two lists. The first list are the decisions we made. You need to be clear about that, right? And you can't do 20 things in a meeting. Are you making a decision? Are you coming up with ideas? Are you giving information? Two at most, and they're not the 5 or 6 that become these mishmash of meetings we do. But the second thing, the list you need is the decisions we need, right? This is where so much of this angst comes from, is you walk out of a meeting like, what do we actually do? And there's lots of things that you run into dead ends because you don't have the person in the room who can write the check.
Right.
Or you need to do additional work. And so making that list of the decisions we need, what will start to happen is you're like, okay, Jess, your job is to go get that decision.
Now I got to do it.
The executive director, a donor, whomever it is, and they might say, no, it's all you. Or yes, here's my choice. And if you do that, what you start to have is now you move things forward. They don't get lost in that in between of we couldn't do it in the room, but we assume they're kind of doing it, but we're not sure they're going to work on it. Two other slightly small things. And these are meeting behaviors that are valuable in every meeting and speak specifically to this, the passive aggressive behavior that happens in meetings. And mostly it happens after meetings, right? It's the meeting after the meeting with people talking.
Oh, yeah.
Number one is assume that silence means no. So I say, hey, are we all agreed? No one knows what alignment means. You can ask a room full of people and they think it's at 51%. Is it 73%? No one knows. But if I say to you, do you agree? Are we on the same page? Yes, 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 no. Okay, fair. I'll come back to you in a second. Or, I'm not so sure, right? Do we need more discussion? But you can't have the meeting says it looks like any objections. It looks like we're on the same page. Now, the silence means no doesn't work for weddings, right? It doesn't, because grandma's then going to have to stand up and say, yeah, I really don't like him at all. But thinking about that as a behavior and making that a practice, it's awkward at first, but it's valuable. The second thing is that when you get the no, ask them then, but are you committed? I don't think we should do this. I don't think we should do this program. I don't think we should apply for this grant. I don't think we should hire this person. Everyone else agrees, right? Yes, 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 no. Okay, but are you committed? And if they're not committed to a decision that the entire organization is otherwise making, if they're an employee, they shouldn't be there anymore.
So what do you mean, are they committed?
But will you still do the work and support us in executing on the decision?
Oh, yeah. So we're going to start the program anyway.
Yeah, because I'm the decision maker and I've decided.
Yep.
Right? I'm the boss. Or we have 7 out of 8 people think it's a good choice. Because by getting them to say, I'm committed, by knowing that silence means no, you give them fewer places to hide.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Versus the discussion after the discussion, I can't believe they did that. I really don't think it's a good idea. And it starts to really build, using those simple practices in your meetings, a dramatically better culture around decision making.
Just thinking, I was like, this leads to a much healthier org culture.
It should.
Yeah. Because everything's out in the open, which especially in the Midwest, and in Minnesota in particular, my people's up here, we struggle with that.
Well, one thing that Jeff Bezos does, and that no, but I'm committed, and it's really powerful as an executive. He'll say, I don't agree. Right? I don't think we should do this, but I'm committed, right? Because it's not in his decision space. It's not something that he is super passionate about. He might just disagree, but if he's got people he trusts who've given him a significant amount of insight, a significant amount of thought for the decision making, it's okay. Like if it's not a sink the boat, bet the farm, use any metaphor you want decision, I think it's okay.
That's awesome. These are extremely helpful answers, and I think everybody is going to want to know where to find you and how they can get this worksheet. I will gladly post a link to it in the show notes. But where can people find you online, Matt? So
if they can look at the Filament, TheFilament.com. That's our main website. We've got a smaller website for our virtual meetings, which we're doing all of them now. We have a 20,000 square foot facility here in St. Louis that is empty, but for me, now going on 9 months. I think we've effectively had a COVID baby. We've been gestating for 9 months, and
we'll be back eventually.
You can look at practicallyinperson.com is our virtual website, but it all comes back to the same place. I'm on the socials at Matt Homann.
All right. Thanks so much for being here. This was great.
It was fun, Jess. It was good to see you again.
Likewise. All right, folks, that's our show. Be sure to follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Jess Birkin. We want to hear from you. Send us a message at our website, charitytherapy.show. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at birkinlaw.com/signup. Charity Therapy is a production of Birkin Law Office, PLLC. Our theme song is by Whalehawk. And remember, folks, this podcast is produced for your entertainment and is not a substitute for actual legal advice.